So if New York is the city that never sleeps, does that make Gotham the city that never dies? So I took a lot longer to get caught up and current and active again with Gotham than I had planned. I had said a while back I was going to start doing episode by episode reviews, and this is me basically trying to catch up and do that. Now obviously I am not going to do individual episode reviews for the first 5 episodes of the season, so let me sort of sum up my feelings really quickly and then get into the latest episode to air, episode 6, which was Hog Day Afternoon. So, coming into season 4, I enjoyed season 3 quite a lot. I mean, I love the show. I think the show was fantastic. I really liked where things started out. I like the position Penguin is in. I like the whole idea and the concept of the licenses. I love the way they were introduced. Victor's been getting a lot of really nice highlights throughout the season, so I'm digging all of that. The early stuff with Scarecrow was pretty cool. I thought that was neat. It was nice to see him come back after, we hadn't seen Jonathan Crane since season 1, I don't think. So that was all neat. I liked that. The Solomon Grundy stuff is, I'm still making up my mind just because he is, I mean, the character's a bit goofy, and I almost kind of wish he didn't talk, like if it was just grunting and repeating that nursery rhyme, because there's something about the me Tarzan you Jane way of speaking that makes it a little bit tough to buy. That said, the actor who had been playing Butch, and I thought was great as Butch, he does sell the physicality and the size and the imposingness of Solomon Grundy pretty well, so that's working. I'm finding the stuff with Ed to be interesting. I kind of need to see where it's gonna go, but I think that's an interesting sort of curveball to throw him as a character, that his head is scrambled. He is not as smart as he once was, and there's a part of me that wonders, does that almost make him more dangerous, the fact that he doesn't really know what he's doing anymore? And I'll be interested to see how that pans out. Lee coming back, that's also, let me see what's going on. Her introduction into things, that worked pretty well for me. Bree and Sophia Falcone, I'm nitpicky on that, because if they were gonna have Sophia Falcone as a character, I really would have preferred that they had physically someone who matched Sophia Falcone from the comics, who is huge. Like, she is this huge just wall of a woman, and yeah, they just went for a generic looking thing. I figure the reason they did that is because they had Jim hook up with her, and I guess they probably weren't going to have him hook up with someone bigger than him, and I think that's a shame. I think Gotham, of any show on television, is a show that could have gotten away with that. But anyway, so there's that. If there's a weakness to the season so far, it's the whole Ra's al Ghul stuff. That hasn't really worked for me, and I could ramble on that for a while, but let me get through it so I can get to the actual current episode. So I think they found the one area of the Batman mythology that I think doesn't actually work when you stick it into the world that they built for Gotham, and that is flat out magic. Now, we've had plenty of iffy stuff, all the hypnosis stuff. I mean, and Alice practically has magic blood, but the thing is, pretty much everything is rooted in some degree of, I don't want to say truth, but some sort of science basis. We've had people coming back from the dead, but it's through, Frankenstein technology. And, it's mad doctors and it's scientists, and, hypnosis has a basis, in fact, and they just took it to an extreme. So when this guy shows up claiming to be thousands of years old with a dagger, and he actually, they actually said the word prophecy, I kind of checked out mentally. That doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like Gotham. And right now I'm iffy on Barbara having been brought back. Now, I love Barbara. I hated her first season, loved her season 2 and season 3 especially. She has been phenomenal. But I also felt like that was a good point to close her out when she died last season. And I said that before, I think. And bringing her back, she also seems less crazy, which makes her less fun. So I kind of want to see that get back on its streak. I think if the Ra's al Ghul thing is going to have any interesting impact, it might be the impact it has on Bruce, and we'll see how that plays out. But this latest episode, for my taste and why I tune into Gotham, is getting things back on track, and that is with the introduction of Professor Pig. And I don't know why I hadn't thought they would do this, lean on the pig cop as a slang for cop angle and have him going after corrupt cops, which means he actually really admires Jim Gordon because he is more or less the incorruptible cop on the force. So that is interesting. I just think the vibe of Professor Pig, because he's this weird kind of creepy killer with an odd methodology, and that's Gotham. That's the show I love. So I feel like this episode is getting things kind of back on track in a way. After, again, the Ra's al Ghul stuff it felt off. It felt like it belonged in a different version of Batman and of this world than this one has been giving us. So yeah, I mean that's kind of it. This ended up being a lot of a summary of my thoughts on the season up to this point, and only a little bit about the new episode. Gordon's still working for me. Bullock, I don't know. I think it was odd that they tried to milk a lot of emotion out of the reveal that Bullock was taking money from Penguin. I mean, that's disappointing, but at the same time, we know he was a dirty cop in the past, and under the circumstances that he's in, it didn't seem like that huge a leap. It's one of those things that I think if they had just played up, if Jim had basically a I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed kind of parenting moment with Harvey, I think that would have rang more true than, more the how long you been taking money from Penguin, more sort of way that they went for it. I think they just came at that revelation from maybe not the best angle. Penguin's work, Penguin always works for me. I am nervous about the Sophia Falcone thing, if only because it feels like it's potentially hitting too many of the same notes as what happened with Ed last season, and that I think that's one of the dangers with this interpretation of the Penguin, is that he's ruthless, he's effective, but he's incredibly driven by his emotions, which makes him fairly easy to manipulate for people who can get in his head just well enough to understand what things are gonna push his buttons. So the result of that is I kind of feel like right now this is potentially retreading some similar ground with him, developing some kind of emotional connection with the person, or believing that he is, because I'm sure she's playing him. But obviously it's a little different because he's more guarded because of what happened with him. But again, it feels just at a basic fundamental level a bit like a retread. And I really loved all the stuff between Ed and Penguin in the last season. So we'll see. I feel like the show has gotten maybe a bit character heavy, and I think its reluctance to kill characters and let them stay dead might be starting to bite it in the butt a little bit, because that as I'm talking about all this, I'm realizing how little we've seen of some of the characters, or how long it's been since we last saw them. I think it's 3 episodes now since we saw Ivy take the stuff that she took, so we still don't know what that did to her, and that seems like an oddly long period of time after having set that up for us to get a payoff on that. We haven't seen a whole lot of Selena. And it seems like this is a show that kind of could use a little bit of a culling. It could use a red wedding to thin the ranks a little bit, but nobody stays dead in Gotham, which Harvey actually comments on, which I love. I am really curious, since I mentioned Ivy, I am really curious to see how they're gonna visually have that look. Surprisingly, I'm kind of liking Ivy. I like that they've created a character who, that aging her up basically gave her a command over people's attention that she doesn't really know how to use fully properly, and she's not mature enough to really be in that body, and it's in a way that is believable to me, because she's flaky in the way that somebody who's the age she should be would be flaky. So I find all that interesting, and I'll be curious to see how that pays out on. This really wasn't specific to this episode. I think I'm gonna have to title this thing just overview of season 4 episodes 1 through 6, because that's kind of what it was. So yeah, again, coming back strong. Most of the core cast is doing good. Alfred's had some really good highlight moments. Bruce is working for me. Scarecrow was good. Ra's al Ghul didn't care for. He appeared to die, but that seemed like an oddly short period in which to kill off not only a character from the comics who's that big, but who was theoretically behind the Court of Owls, who had been behind Hugo Strange. So like, this is the guy behind the guys who were behind the guy, and I don't know, it seems short-lived, so I'm sure he's gonna come back somehow. But Professor Pig, that I'm digging that. That feels more like where Gotham should be, you know, ground level, dirty, messed up crime, as opposed to, you know, global, international, jet-setting, immortal guy, I guess. So those are my rambly, sleep-deprived thoughts on Gotham season 4 so far. Are you watching it? If you're watching this video, I assume you are. What are your thoughts on it? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Give a listen to the Council of Geeks podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. I'm also one half of the Punch Like a Girl podcast. That's available on the Fire and Water Podcast Network, fireandwaterpodcast.com. And until next time, this council is adjourned.